Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind and Defy the Odds. Introduction: Embracing the Impossible. At some point, we all have to confront the truth. Life is hard. It will knock you down, and sometimes it will keep you there. The question is, what are you going to do about it? David Goggins doesn't just pose this question, he lives it. Born into a world of unrelenting abuse, prejudice, and poverty, Goggins' story begins in the shadows of despair. As a young boy, he endured a childhood defined by trauma and a toxic environment where hope seemed like a distant luxury. Statistically, Goggins was destined for failure, trapped in a cycle of pain, self-doubt, and unfulfilled potential. But this is not a story about surrender, it is a story about resilience. It is about confronting the limits we impose on ourselves and realizing that those limits are often illusions. Through sheer willpower, unbreakable mental toughness, and relentless work ethic, Goggins transformed his life into a blueprint for achieving the impossible. From an overweight exterminator to a Navy SEAL, an elite endurance athlete, and a global symbol of grit, Goggins' journey demonstrates that the human spirit is far more powerful than we give it credit for. Along the way, he became the only man to complete Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, and Air Force Tactical Air Controller training. He shattered records in ultramarathons and pull-ups, redefining the boundaries of human endurance. In Can't Hurt Me, Goggins shares not just his story but his strategy, a hard-earned set of principles designed to help you break through your own barriers. Over the next chapters, we'll dive into the tools Goggins used to turn pain into power, fear into fuel, and limitations into triumphs. Whether you're battling personal demons, seeking new challenges, or simply striving to become the best version of yourself, Goggins' methods are a call to action. He doesn't promise shortcuts or guarantees. Instead, he offers raw, actionable wisdom for those ready to embrace discomfort and fight for their potential. This is more than a story of survival. It is a masterclass in harnessing adversity and achieving greatness. Are you ready to confront the impossible? Let's begin. Chapter 1: Breaking Free from the Chains of the Past. For David Goggins, childhood was a crucible of relentless suffering. Born in Buffalo, New York in 1975, his early years were overshadowed by the iron grip of his abusive father, Toughness Goggins. Toughness was a demanding businessman who owned a roller disco rink, a venture that thrived at the expense of his family's well-being. For young David, life was anything but innocent play. It was a nightly grind of labor, exhaustion, and terror. At just 6 years old, David's life revolved around the rink. His job was to maintain the roller skates while his mother worked tirelessly in the office. Nights stretched into the early hours of the morning, with pounding music shaking the walls and leaving him sleepless. By day, his exhaustion seeped into the classroom, often leading him to fall asleep during lessons. Worse than the physical toll was the emotional torment. Toughness Goggins ruled his family with an iron fist, meting out brutal punishments for even minor infractions. David and his mother bore the brunt of his violence, often enduring vicious beatings. The trauma was so severe that it left David hiding welts and bruises beneath his school clothes, the marks of a childhood stolen by abuse. When David was 8, his mother made the brave decision to escape. They fled to Indiana, seeking a new start far from Toughness' tyranny. But their fresh beginning was tainted by the racial prejudice of rural America. As the only black family in the area, David became a target for racial slurs and threats, with neighbors brandishing firearms and using slurs to intimidate him. The effects of these compounded traumas began to manifest physically and emotionally. David developed a stutter, patches of his hair fell out, and his skin showed signs of vitiligo, where portions lost pigment. These symptoms were later recognized as the result of toxic stress, a state of heightened fight-or-flight response triggered by chronic abuse. Academically, David struggled to keep up. By 4th grade, he was placed in special education classes, a reflection not of his intelligence but of a chaotic environment that left no room for learning. Frustrated and ashamed, he resorted to cheating his way through school, a stopgap measure that improved his grades but left his education severely lacking. David's early years seemed like a script for a tragic life. Statistically, children from abusive households face increased risks of depression, addiction, chronic illness, and even premature death. Yet, even as a child, Goggins displayed an unyielding spark, a refusal to accept his circumstances as his destiny. In this chapter of his life, David learned his first painful lessons about adversity. He witnessed firsthand how hardship could crush the spirit, yet he also began to understand that survival required more than endurance, it demanded transformation. Though he couldn't articulate it yet, this period laid the groundwork for the mental toughness and resilience that would later define his extraordinary life. From the depths of despair, David Goggins began his ascent, one small, painful step at a time. His journey wasn't just about breaking free from his abusive father or the limitations of his environment, it was about reclaiming control over his life. The chains of his past were heavy, but he was determined to shatter them. Chapter 2: The Accountability Mirror. Adversity often presents two choices: succumb to it or rise above it. For David Goggins, his early years had delivered a relentless torrent of challenges, leaving him scarred but not defeated. By the time he entered high school, however, the weight of his circumstances seemed insurmountable. Overweight, unmotivated, and failing academically, Goggins found himself at a crossroads. He could continue drifting aimlessly, or he could take ownership of his future. That turning point came when he met an Air Force recruiter. The recruiter, a pararescue jumper, represented everything David wanted to be: disciplined, capable, and heroic. Inspired, he decided to join the Air Force. But this goal, seemingly simple in theory, was anything but. The first obstacle was the SVAB, Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, the test required to qualify for military service. For someone who could barely read and had spent most of his academic career cheating, the challenge was monumental. When Goggins took a hard look at himself, he didn't like what he saw. The mirror reflected not just his physical form but also the weight of his self-doubt and unfulfilled potential. This moment of brutal honesty led to the creation of what he calls the accountability mirror. Armed with post-it notes and a fierce determination to change, Goggins transformed his reflection from a source of shame into a tool for self-discipline and motivation. The accountability mirror became his daily ritual. Each note contained a specific, measurable goal: clean the room, study vocabulary words, run a mile. The tasks were simple but deliberate, designed to build momentum and instill a sense of accomplishment. Every time he completed a goal, he would replace the note with a new challenge, progressively raising the bar. For Goggins, the mirror became a place of truth-telling. Each morning, he confronted his weaknesses, dissected his excuses, and committed himself to action. "If you're fat, own it," he later wrote. "It's okay to be fat, but it's not okay to stay fat if that's not what you want to be. Call yourself out." This unflinching self-honesty was not an exercise in self-loathing, it was a declaration of self-determination. Through sheer willpower and relentless practice, Goggins slowly began to close the gap between who he was and who he wanted to be. He spent hours each day poring over textbooks, relearning concepts he had ignored or cheated through in school. He also began to focus on his physical fitness, going for runs, doing push-ups, and gradually transforming his body, but the journey was far from smooth. Goggins encountered countless setbacks, including a paralyzing fear of swimming, a skill he would need to master for military training. Growing up in Indiana, he had rarely seen a pool, let alone swum in one. Overcoming this fear would require the same methodical approach he applied to his other goals, breaking the challenge into smaller, manageable steps and refusing to give up. Despite his progress, life threw another curveball. A routine medical test revealed that Goggins had a genetic predisposition to sickle cell anemia, a condition that causes severe fatigue and pain. Using this diagnosis as an excuse, Goggins withdrew from Air Force training, abandoning his dream of becoming a pararescue jumper. This setback could have ended his journey, but instead, it became a lesson in resilience. Goggins realized that excuses, no matter how valid, could not define him. The accountability mirror was his reminder of that. Every post-it note carried a promise to himself, a commitment to keep pushing, to face the brutal truths of his life, and to take responsibility for his future. The accountability mirror was more than a motivational tool, It was a declaration of war on mediocrity. Through it, Goggins began to understand the power of ownership, the idea that no one else is responsible for your success or failure. By embracing this principle, he set the stage for the extraordinary feats that would define his later life. The accountability mirror was not just a method, it was a mindset. It taught Goggins to confront his limitations, dismantle his excuses, and transform his reflection into a source of pride. And it all started with a handful of post-it notes and the willingness to look himself in the eye. Chapter 3: The Turning Point. After leaving the Air Force, David Goggins found himself at one of the lowest points in his life. Working as an overnight exterminator in Indianapolis, he had become trapped in a cycle of mediocrity. He was severely overweight, tipping the scales at nearly 300 pounds, and deeply unhappy. His days were a blur of dead-end work and self-loathing, and his nights were haunted by memories of the life he had once dreamed of but abandoned. One early morning, after a particularly grueling night of spraying cockroaches, Goggins reached his breaking point. Covered in filth and questioning how his life had unraveled to this point, he returned home to find solace in his usual routine of television. But on this morning, what he stumbled upon changed his life forever. A documentary about Navy SEALs flashed across the screen, showcasing the grueling trials of basic underwater demolition SEAL training. The Navy SEALs represented everything Goggins felt he lacked: discipline, resilience, and purpose. Watching them endure seemingly impossible challenges with relentless determination lit a spark within him. In that moment, Goggins made a decision. He would become a Navy SEAL. But the odds were stacked against him. At 297 pounds, he was far beyond the Navy's weight limit for recruits. What's more, the SEAL training program was set to close its application window in just 3 months. To even have a chance, Goggins would need to lose over 100 pounds, more than a pound a day, while simultaneously preparing for the rigorous physical and mental demands of this training. What followed was an extraordinary display of self-discipline and tenacity. Goggins overhauled every aspect of his life, creating a grueling schedule that pushed his body and mind to their limits. He woke up at 4:30 a.m. each day, starting with 2 hours on an exercise bike. From there, he drove to the nearest pool, confronting his lifelong fear of water with hours of relentless swimming. His afternoons were spent at the gym, completing high-repetition strength training circuits, and his evenings were dedicated to more cycling and cardio. Beyond the physical effort, Goggins also attacked his mental barriers. He resurrected his accountability mirror, filling it with post-it notes that served as constant reminders of his goals and his commitment to achieving them. Each note was a challenge, a promise, and a motivator all rolled into one. The journey was brutal. Goggins battled through physical pain, mental exhaustion, and the nagging doubts that told him he couldn't succeed, but he refused to quit. With each pound lost and each task completed, he chipped away at the image of the man he used to be, replacing it with the person he aspired to become. Incredibly, Goggins achieved his goal. By the time the 3-month deadline arrived, he had shed over 100 pounds and met the Navy's physical requirements. He was accepted into BUDS, where the real challenges began. BUDS is infamous for its intensity. Of the 120 recruits who start the program, only about 30 make it through. The training pushes candidates to their breaking point, testing their physical endurance and mental resilience in equal measure. The third week of the program, known as Hell Week, is particularly harrowing. Recruits are subjected to 5.5 days of continuous physical activity with less than 4 hours of sleep. Many drop out, unable to withstand the relentless strain. For Goggins, Hell Week was not just a test of endurance, but a crucible that forged his unbreakable mindset. During one of the most grueling challenges, where recruits had to lift heavy boats above their heads and march across the beach, Goggins discovered what he calls taking souls. It's the act of demoralizing your competition or tormentors by showing them that their efforts to break you are futile. Goggins rallied his team, turning their collective pain into a source of strength. Together they chanted and laughed, defying their instructors' attempts to crush their spirits. This moment became a defining principle in Goggins' life. Taking souls wasn't about revenge or superiority. It was about reclaiming power in the face of adversity. It was a way of proving, both to himself and others, that his determination was unshakable. By the end of Hell Week, Goggins had transformed not just physically but mentally. He had discovered the depths of his resilience and the limitless potential of the human spirit. This realization would propel him through the rest of Bud/his training and set the stage for his future achievements. Goggins' journey from a 300-pound exterminator to a Navy SEAL is proof of the power of grit, discipline, and unrelenting commitment. It was the turning point in his life, a moment when he chose to stop making excuses and start taking action. Through sheer willpower, he redefined what was possible, not just for himself, but for anyone willing to embrace the same level of determination. Chapter 4: The 40% Rule. David Goggins had defied the odds to become a Navy SEAL, but his thirst for pushing boundaries didn't end there. With his SEAL training behind him, he found himself craving the intense challenges that had shaped his transformation. This desire to continually test his limits led him to the world of ultramarathons, a realm where physical endurance and mental fortitude are pushed to their absolute extremes. In 2005, Goggins discovered the Badwater 155, one of the most grueling ultramarathons in the world. The race spans 135 miles through California's Death Valley in July, with temperatures soaring above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. This was not just a race, it was a crucible for human endurance. Inspired by the challenge, Goggins set his sights on qualifying, a feat that required running another 100-mile race in under 24 hours. The race he chose was the San Diego One-Day, a test of stamina and mental strength. However, Goggins' preparation for the race was unorthodox, even by ultramarathon standards. With minimal training, he relied on sheer willpower and determination. He had never run farther than a marathon, 26 miles, yet he was about to attempt nearly 4 times that distance. The race proved to be every bit as brutal as expected. By the 70-mile mark, Goggins' body was breaking down. He lost control of his bladder and bowels, his vision blurred, and the pain in his legs was excruciating. The average person would have stopped, but Goggins kept going. With every step, he tapped into what he later identified as the 40% rule. This principle posits that when your mind tells you you're done, you've actually only reached about 40% of your capacity. The remaining 60% is untapped potential, locked behind mental barriers that most people never break through. For Goggins, pushing past this psychological limit was the key to unlocking extraordinary feats. By forcing himself to continue running, Goggins discovered a new level of resilience. He completed the San Diego One-Day race in just under 19 hours, covering 101 miles and qualifying for the Badwater 135. This experience not only proved the validity of the 40% rule, but also cemented his belief in the limitless potential of the human spirit. Armed with this new mindset, Goggins began training for the Badwater 135. This time, his preparation was meticulous. He studied the course, acclimated himself to the extreme heat, and trained on similar terrain. On race day, he faced not just the physical demands of the course, but also the mental battles that come with running for over 30 hours straight. Despite the punishing conditions, Goggins finished the Badwater 135 in 5th place, a remarkable achievement for someone who had entered the ultrarunning world only months earlier. His success in this race marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one defined by an insatiable drive to test his limits and inspire others to do the same. The 40% rule became a cornerstone of Goggins' philosophy. He began applying it to every aspect of his life, from physical challenges to professional endeavors. He believed that by pushing past perceived limitations, anyone could achieve greatness. This rule also has profound implications for everyday life. Whether you're running a marathon, pursuing a career goal, or facing personal adversity, the 40% rule reminds you that you are capable of far more than you think. It's about challenging the narratives your mind creates, the excuses, fears, and doubts, and proving them wrong. Goggins' journey through ultramarathons was not just about physical achievement, it was a lesson in mental toughness and self-discovery. By embracing the 40% rule, he demonstrated that the barriers we face are often self-imposed. Breaking through them requires discipline, determination, and an unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit. Through his experiences, Goggins showed that greatness lies not in talent or luck, but in the willingness to push beyond what feels possible. The 40% rule is not just a strategy for running, it's a blueprint for overcoming any obstacle and achieving extraordinary success. Chapter 5: Becoming Uncommon Among the Uncommon. After conquering the Badwater 135 and earning his place as one of the world's most elite endurance athletes, David Goggins continued to push the boundaries of what was possible. But his relentless drive wasn't fueled by a desire for accolades or external validation. It was driven by a philosophy he called becoming uncommon among the uncommon. This was about transcending the achievements of even the most exceptional individuals, proving that true greatness lies in surpassing your own limits and continuing to grow. The curveball. While Goggins was thriving as an ultramarathon runner and inspiring others with his grit, life threw him an unexpected challenge. During one of his routine medical checkups, doctors discovered a serious condition, a congenital heart defect known as atrial septal defect, or a hole in his heart. This condition had deprived his body of oxygen for years and could have been fatal during any of his extreme physical feats, particularly his deep-sea diving as a Navy SEAL. Faced with this diagnosis, Goggins underwent surgery to repair the defect. The recovery process was grueling, forcing him to pause his intense physical activities. For someone who thrived on pushing himself to the edge, this was a monumental setback. But instead of allowing it to derail him, Goggins used the time to reflect, recalibrate, and refocus on his goals, pivoting to a new challenge. Unable to participate in ultramarathons or SEAL missions during his recovery, Goggins set his sights on a new challenge, breaking the world record for the most pull-ups completed in 24 hours. This goal was symbolic of his philosophy. It wasn't just about achieving another milestone, it was about showing that setbacks and obstacles are merely opportunities to prove your resilience. The world record for pull-ups stood at 4,021, requiring an average of 5 pull-ups per minute for nearly 14 hours. Goggins knew this would test not only his physical strength, but also his mental endurance. His first attempt, broadcast live on national television, ended in failure. Severe hand injuries forced him to stop after completing 2,500 pull-ups. A second attempt ended similarly, with his body giving out before he could reach the finish line. For many, these failures would have been enough to walk away. But for Goggins, they were lessons, opportunities to refine his strategy and strengthen his resolve. On January 20, 2013, during his third attempt, Goggins broke the world record, completing 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours. This achievement wasn't just a proof of his physical endurance, it was a statement about perseverance, adaptation, and the power of mental fortitude. Becoming uncommon. Becoming uncommon among the uncommon means striving to stand out even in the most elite circles. For Goggins, this philosophy extended beyond physical feats. It was about embodying a mindset of constant improvement, never settling for mediocrity, and refusing to be complacent no matter how much success one achieves. Goggins recognized that the most exceptional individuals, whether Navy SEALs, elite athletes, or world-class professionals, often reach a point where they plateau. They achieve greatness and rest on their laurels. For Goggins, this was unacceptable. His mission was to continually raise the bar, proving that there is always another level to reach. This philosophy is universally applicable. Whether you're a teacher, a business professional, or an artist, becoming uncommon among the uncommon is about striving to be the best in your field, then pushing even further. It's about setting the standard for others to follow and inspiring them to push their own boundaries. The mindset of greatness. Goggins' journey underscores a crucial lesson. Greatness isn't about talent or luck, it's about mindset. The same principles that fueled his ultramarathon victories and world record achievements can be applied to any pursuit. It starts with a willingness to confront discomfort, embrace failure, and commit to relentless self-improvement. By becoming uncommon among the uncommon, Goggins demonstrated that true success isn't about beating others, it's about surpassing the person you were yesterday. It's about finding joy in the struggle, pride in the effort, and fulfillment in the journey of growth. His philosophy challenges us to redefine our limits and reject the notion of good enough. In Goggins' world, there is no finish line, only the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove that we are capable of more than we ever imagined. Chapter 6: Harnessing the Power of the Mind. David Goggins' journey to defy the odds, from an abused overweight child to a Navy SEAL and world-renowned endurance athlete, culminates in one resounding message: the power of the mind is limitless. His story is not just one of physical triumph, it is a masterclass in mental toughness, resilience, and the untapped potential that lies within all of us. The mind as a weapon. For Goggins, the mind is not just a tool, it is the ultimate weapon. While most people see mental and physical barriers as insurmountable, Goggins reframed them as challenges to overcome. This mindset allowed him to embrace suffering as a means of personal growth. He often says, "Suffering is the true test of life," a philosophy that underpins his relentless pursuit of self-mastery. This mental framework was not innate but forged through years of deliberate practice. Goggins trained his mind the same way he trained his body, by exposing it to discomfort and forcing it to adapt. Whether it was running 100-mile races with broken feet or enduring grueling Navy SEAL training, Goggins used every challenge to sharpen his mental fortitude. Callousing the mind. One of Goggins' key strategies for mental toughness is what he calls callousing the mind. Just as the body develops calluses to withstand physical stress, the mind can be conditioned to endure and thrive under mental stress. This involves deliberately placing yourself in uncomfortable situations and persevering through them, no matter how challenging they may seem. For Goggins, callousing the mind began with small victories. He would push himself to run a little farther, study a little longer, or endure a little more pain than he thought possible. Each time he succeeded, he added a layer of resilience to his mental armor. Over time, these small victories compounded, enabling him to face increasingly daunting challenges with confidence and grit. The governor within. Goggins often speaks of the governor within our minds, a self-imposed limiter that tells us to stop when we still have more to give. This internal voice is the root of excuses, fear, and self-doubt. According to Goggins, most people only operate at 40% of their potential because they allow this governor to dictate their actions. To overcome the governor, Goggins advocates for pushing past the point of discomfort. Whether it's finishing a workout when you feel like quitting or taking on a daunting project at work, every time you override the governor, you expand your capacity. This is how you access the untapped 60% of your potential. Visualization and accountability. Another critical component of Goggins' mental strategy is visualization. He would vividly imagine himself succeeding in his goals, whether it was completing Navy SEAL training or finishing an ultramarathon. This practice allowed him to mentally rehearse his achievements and build confidence in his ability to succeed. Coupled with visualization, Goggins relied on accountability. His famous accountability mirror was a tool for brutally honest self-assessment. By writing down his goals and tracking his progress daily, he held himself accountable for his actions. This relentless self-reflection ensured that he stayed focused and disciplined, even when motivation waned. Living a life without regret. Goggins' philosophy of mental toughness is ultimately about living a life without regret. He believes that most people settle for mediocrity because they fear failure or discomfort. But for Goggins, the greatest failure is not trying at all. He argues that regret, not failure, is the true source of pain. To avoid regret, Goggins challenges himself and others to chase their full potential relentlessly. This means setting audacious goals, embracing discomfort, and never settling for good enough. It's about living with purpose, knowing that you've given everything you have to achieve your dreams. The legacy of mental toughness. Through his story, Goggins has proven that the power of the mind is greater than any physical limitation. He has inspired countless people to redefine their boundaries and pursue greatness. His lessons are not reserved for elite athletes or military personnel, they are universal principles that anyone can apply to their own life. By harnessing the power of the mind, you can achieve what once seemed impossible. Whether it's starting a business, improving your health, or overcoming personal adversity, the tools Goggins provides, callousing the mind, defeating the governor, and embracing discomfort, are the keys to unlocking your potential. Goggins' journey reminds us that the only limits are the ones we impose on ourselves. By challenging those limits, we can transform our lives, turning adversity into strength and fear into fuel. In the words of Goggins, it's not about being the best, it's about being better than you were yesterday. Through the power of the mind, that transformation is within everyone's reach. Conclusion: a blueprint for limitless potential. David Goggins' life is a proof of the transformative power of resilience, discipline, and the human spirit. From enduring an abusive childhood and battling obesity to becoming a Navy SEAL and breaking world records, Goggins embodies the belief that we are all capable of more than we realize. His journey is a call to action for anyone who has ever doubted their own potential. Lessons from the battlefield of life. Throughout Can't Hurt Me, Goggins shares a powerful message. Life will throw challenges at you, but your response defines who you are. Whether it's toxic stress, systemic barriers, or physical limitations, obstacles are inevitable. But within each challenge lies an opportunity to grow stronger and rise above. By adopting the principles of mental toughness, self-discipline, and relentless determination, Goggins shows us that we can rewrite the narrative of our lives. From creating an accountability mirror to implementing the 40% rule, Goggins provides actionable tools for overcoming fear, self-doubt, and complacency. He demonstrates that failure is not the enemy, it's an essential part of growth. By pushing past the pain, confronting our weaknesses, and embracing discomfort, we can achieve things we once thought impossible. Living beyond limits. The core of Goggins' philosophy is not about achieving perfection or comparing yourself to others. It's about discovering your own limits and then breaking them. It's about becoming uncommon among the uncommon, striving for greatness even when you've already achieved success. In Goggins' world, there's always another level to reach, another challenge to conquer, another way to grow. This mindset extends far beyond physical feats. Whether you're navigating a demanding career, pursuing personal goals, or overcoming emotional trauma, the principles Goggins shares are universally applicable. His story inspires us to take ownership of our lives, reject excuses, and commit fully to the pursuit of our potential. A life without regrets. At its heart, Goggins' story is about living a life without regrets. He challenges us to confront the question, what legacy will you leave behind? For Goggins, it's not about accolades or recognition, it's about knowing that he gave everything he had, every single day. He reminds us that the greatest pain is not failure, but the regret of not trying. By embracing Goggins' principles, we can push past our fears, silence the inner critic, and discover the strength that lies within us. We can live boldly, fully, and without reservation. The final takeaway. David Goggins' journey is proof that the human spirit is unbreakable. Through hard work, self-discipline, and mental toughness, we can overcome even the most daunting obstacles. His story is a blueprint for anyone seeking to maximize their potential, and his life is a reminder that greatness is not reserved for the chosen few. It is within reach for all of us. So, as Goggins often says, stay hard, embrace the struggle, confront your limits, and live a life so full of purpose that, when your time comes, you can look back and say, I left nothing on the table.